Once again, I want to give a big congratulations to the Michigan Wolverines for winning the national championship game in a game that, in my honest opinion, was never close, or at least it didn't feel like it. It was close in terms of the number that you saw on the scoreboard, but it really didn't feel as if Washington had a chance after the second quarter. Going into halftime, I know it was 10-17, and it felt like if Washington can go back on offense and somehow establish something, but once Washington got back on offense, they couldn't do much. I mean, they got 3 points in the third quarter, 0 in the fourth. The Michigan defense is the reason they won this game. I know the rushing attack was fantastic, especially in the first half. You have Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards going for over 100 yards rushing. And you look at a game like this, a game that many of us college football fans anticipate every single year. And I'm not saying that this was a bad game. It was definitely better than last year, TCU versus Georgia. But at the same time, this game felt very lopsided. I was not too excited at any point in time in the game. And like I said, I'm not saying it wasn't a good game, but what I'm saying is Washington did not do what I thought they were capable of doing. I thought this score would be a lot closer than it was. And if you watch the first three quarters, was it exciting in times? Yes, but Washington just looked off. They looked off. Michael Penix Jr. especially early threw a few passes high, missed a few passes. There was one pass I want to say almost like straight up the seam, and he threw it as if it was supposed to be a corner route. And I don't know, maybe it was he threw the ball where I guess he thought the guy was going to turn to, but instead Rome Odunze just kept going straight up like a go route. And so I don't know, it looked very confusing. He missed a few passes and the wide receivers dropped a few passes, and that is all attributed to the Michigan defense, that pressure that was getting to Michael Penix. And you saw how Michael Penix left the game. Michael Penix came into this game one way and left the game another way. They physically beat up Michael Penix Jr. And I'm talking about the Michigan defensive line. They came to play, but I really want to give the hugest, the biggest, the most shout out, or whatever you want to call this, to the Michigan secondary. They did exactly what Texas could not do, and that was go toe-to-toe with the wide receivers of Washington. Now, did the Michigan secondary give up a few plays? Did they give up some wide open throws here? Yes. In college football, you're going to see that a lot. You're going to see those things kind of break down some. You're going to see a busted coverage here. You'll see misses, okay? But in this totality, to have Michael Penix Jr. go 27 of 51, 255, one touchdown, and two interceptions, that is a fantastic night for the Michigan Wolverines, okay? That's a fantastic day, okay? And if you're a Washington fan, look, don't be, it's hard for me to say don't be upset. I, as an Alabama fan, has had to endure a lot of losses in the championship games, but I also had some great wins. And when you lose, you know, it's hard. It's hard, especially me. You know, people call my phone as soon as Alabama loses. But Washington, you have what you need in order to go forward and potentially win in the future. You have more going for your I want to say franchise so bad. You have more going for your program right now than most schools do. You have, in my opinion, the coach for the future to lead you to someday, somehow getting a national championship down the line. And as for Michigan fans, I know we're anticipating that Jim is going to be leaving, but I also believe that you guys will also be in great hands. The offensive coordinator for Michigan, I think his name is Sharon Moore, he is the next guy for Michigan, I believe. Now, they may go in an entirely different direction. As I'm recording this video, I have no idea if they're going to hire him. I have no idea if Jim Harbaugh is leaving. But at the same time, we anticipate Jim to leave, and I anticipate Sharon Moore to get a job. Now, I'm not saying every single offense coordinator can just step into a head coaching spot and just lead right off the gate. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is he at least deserves a shot at it, because when Jim Harbaugh was suspended, he did what he needed to do in order to keep the team afloat, and he looked all right doing it. You're going to be losing some pieces, which all teams do. You're going to have to retool, but Michigan will do that. They'll do that. They'll be just fine. Washington, coming off of this great season, they'll retool as well. They're losing. Well, both teams are losing their QBs here, to the NFL, and so as it goes, you get your time in college, and now it's time for those guys to go on, and I wish them nothing but success in the league, being somebody who enjoys both the college game and the professional game. I am very excited to see the future of the quarterbacks, the future of other players in the NCAA as well, go on to the NFL and hopefully have very successful careers. But getting back to the game itself, talking about the defense, talking about everything that happened in this national championship game, like I said earlier, it just felt like Washington wasn't in it, even though the scoreboard said differently. It had that Alabama-Michigan vibe a little bit, even though the Alabama-Michigan game was a lot better, in my opinion. It came to be a lot closer and it needed overtime, but at halftime, you had that feeling like Michigan is dominating this game. I'm talking about straight dominating the game, but somehow they couldn't pull away from what Washington was doing. The defense of Washington, I do want to give them some type of props here, because it looked like, especially early, that Michigan was going to simply run all over them, but they were able to get some key stops, and the offense of Washington could not get it together in order to lessen the blow. Because if Washington could have gotten some offense generated off of some of the great plays that defense made, because there were some stops there, I looked at this Washington team and was like, the defense is doing a great job. Okay, the defense is doing a good job. But as you saw, the passing game for Washington just could not get it going. And Michigan passing game didn't really get it going as well. Let's talk JJ McCarthy for a second here. He was 10 for 18, 140. Not his best performance, but he did exactly what he needed to do in key moments. There were a few moments here, but let's talk about two in particular. He was down. I want to say they were very close to their end zone, and he dropped back in the pocket, and nobody was open in his eye view, so he took off, got the first down, and then on the next play, they proceeded to run a design quarterback run, and I'm like, okay, JJ McCarthy is not affecting this game with his arm whatsoever. He did make a few key passes, but in terms of a just great passing performance, neither quarterback had that. But when it was time to make a key play here and there to keep Washington off the field, JJ McCarthy did that. He did that. And so I do have to give him props for that. JJ McCarthy, I'm going to tell you the biggest thing he did, which was actually the biggest thing that he didn't do. He took care of the football. One of the most important things and one of the most underrated things in this game that I feel like a lot of people are not going to think about when they think about JJ McCarthy. And me, look, I'm going to tell you right now, I have been one of the biggest JJ McCarthy critics. And for me to come on here and say this, I'm just saying, I think I took some of the things that JJ McCarthy did for this Michigan team for granted a little bit. And I'm watching it, or as I was watching that game, I was like, look, your running attack is doing fantastic. And as a quarterback, you have to know certain things. Maybe you can realize, like, look, it's not my night. No need to force anything. And a lot of times you get QBs who want to force everything. And instead of just playing smart football, realizing that your running attack is doing great, your defense is playing so good that they're holding teams to under 20 for the longest periods of time ever. Alabama had 20, Washington had 20. I don't know how far it goes back, but at the same, Washington had 20, had under 20, they had 13, but you get the point. At the same time, JJ McCarthy realized this. He took care of the football. No turnovers for JJ McCarthy, which I think is one of the biggest stats that won't make the stat sheet. You won't necessarily see it when you first look at it, but when you think about it, 10 for 18, 140, you probably look at that and say JJ McCarthy did nothing to help his team win. On the contrary, being a QB, realizing that your team is in a situation where you need to run the ball, you need to take care of the ball. That's one of the biggest things that a quarterback has to realize, and he realized that, and he did exactly what he needed to do, and he made plays when he was called upon. You see what I'm saying? And so once again, like I said earlier, shout out to the Michigan Wolverines. It's going to be interesting to see how all the developments now move on to the future. I think the early AP poll dropped as soon as the game was over. I said early AP poll. It's like the too early something poll. I want to say like maybe Fox or CBS or somebody put that out. It's not the AP poll, but we're going to be covering college football even though this is the off season, guys. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel. This was a great 3/4 of football, but it just did not have that feeling. I mean, I don't want to say I was bored watching it, but I was very intrigued by the hype, and maybe I'm just disappointed in Washington because they didn't put up or didn't execute some plays that were there. There were some plays there to be made, but they didn't execute the plays. But I was very, how can I put this? I was very intrigued by that secondary of Michigan, because it seemed like every time Washington threw the ball, the DBs, like, I do get hyped by defensive play. Now, I do get hyped by defensive play, okay? So it is what it is, man. It is what it is. The first 3 quarters were great. The 4th quarter, I think the biggest letdown, I think that's what it is, and so it's fresh on my mind. That 4th quarter was so disappointing because I expected something different. Even if Michigan would have still won, I expected like it to get real close, kind of like the Texas versus Washington game did. That game, even though Washington was in command the entire time, it got close, it got nippy, but Washington still pulled it out. And this one, it didn't get close or nippy. I just wanted that as a college football fan, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this entire season of college football, the championship game all the way back to the first week of the season. And I will see you guys in the next video.